Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here. I hope you're having a very good Sunday summer afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you may be. Here in central New York, where I am, I say central, I mean New York City, is a sweltering heat wave. And I hope wherever you are, you're cool, you're warm, balanced. And I welcome you to another episode of our latest series called Biblical Characters Decoded, Lessons for Life. And today, let's speak about an important subject that we all have to deal with, balancing two very extreme forces in our lives. So we're titling which biblical character? The character of David, a paradox, an embodiment and personification of paradox. David, King David, the warrior and the psalmist. This program is dedicated in honor of our dear friend Rachel Kaplan, with deep appreciation and gratitude for your generous support and friendship, general and specific support and friendship. So thank you for being here. Let's talk about one of the big challenges in life. When we're young and in our child formative years, we mostly do not have to deal with much battles, hopefully. I mean, unfortunately, today more often than we would like, children do grow up in a battle zone, in a war zone, in homes that are not at peace and not wholesome or functional. But that's not the way it's meant to be. In most cases, children should be growing up in a peaceful, nurturing environment. So we grow up in a very, as I said, peaceful. We don't have to fight the battles of life until we enter our older years. When I say older, it could be teenage years, it could be young adult, it could be later. The later the better, frankly. But then we do encounter the battles of life. We encounter duplicity, we encounter corruption, we encounter very competitive people who take advantage, and we have to learn to navigate and to negotiate and to maneuver. And not everybody is honest. And I don't necessarily mean always a battle in a negative sense. Battle means that you have to put up your armor, because you don't know who's being exploitive, who's really your friend, and who's not. And we do live in a world where often it's dog eats dog, and people are out to survival of the fittest, is the expression used, whether it's Darwinism or social Darwinism, the concept of being pitted against one another. And sometimes it works out very well. But many of us have developed fangs, for lack of a better word. We've developed claws. We've developed our battle mode. And unfortunately, if some of us grew up in a battle zone, as I mentioned, often that's our default state. But even if it's not our default state, if we grew up in a beautiful place, there's a point where you lose your naivete and you suddenly realize there are some places I can't just be just giving and pleasant in every situation. We always have to be pleasant, but we can't always be completely off guard because people can take advantage of us. So we put up our different armor, our different defenses, and so on. For many, this becomes a compartmentalization dance. That at home, they're like soft and gentle like a lamb. At work, like a shark. I mean, I've met many people who've told me at work, people consider me to be a monster. I try to be ethical, but I'm tough, demanding, because I have to protect our interests, my company's interests. Negotiations, some people very tough. Then they meet me when I'm at home, I'm like a little lamb. My wife controls everything at home, my children and other elements. And when you ask someone, how do you balance this softer side, this harder side of yourself? It's not so simple. Often things do spill over. Unfortunately, often the wrong way, which means some of our harshness, some of our toughness spills over into our homes. So it's not an easy dance, an easy tango to really maneuver these two forces. And at the end of the day, you start asking yourself, is life a battle or is it a peaceful terrain? Is it a peaceful environment? Can we balance the two? And this is not an easy question to answer. Those of us that have chosen let's call it the more peaceful and passive approach, and when I say passive, I don't necessarily mean in a passive as in opposed to protecting yourself, but we don't want to encounter, we don't like confrontation, often have to compromise, sometimes in that competitive rat race, the roller coaster of life. And many of us actually choose a life, a much more calm life, a rural life. People move off the reservation, so to speak, from the cities, urban communities, and go to a place that's a little more comfortable, a little more where their pastures and nature up on their mountain, so to speak, their oasis. It's much easier life. But it's hard to imagine for many Westerners, especially in the Western world. Some of us are too addicted. I come from New York. I'm a New Yorker. New Yorker, there's a certain high octane element to it. And it is difficult to be in that highly driven place while also having inner peace within. But what I want to share with you is that actually both are possible, and we could balance them, and more than that, we could integrate them. But the key is to understand what's the driving force behind, whether it's our battles or our peaceful encounters in life. Is it just the different people that we know? Like, in other words, family, friends, people you trust, that's where you have a far more calm attitude. And it's the people that are strangers or the ones that are not trustworthy or are still in doubt, that's where you're more in battle gear? Or is there something deeper to it? And I think it always goes back to who are we and what drives our lives. And here's where King David comes into play. King David, if you read the story, the humble King David began in a very humble way. He was a shepherd. A shepherd. He dealt with sheep. Very similar to the patriarchs in the Bible, the biblical patriarchs. They chose to be shepherds, and we're told why. Because that sheep are essentially docile and tamed. They don't require much tending to. You have to watch over them. But it's very conducive for a spiritual type of person, a poet, a romantic, a dreamer, to spend time in the pastures, the sheep graze, while you can meditate and pray and be mindful, whatever expression you'd like to use. More soulful, more introspective. Away from the Wall Street of the times, which is far more aggressive, and you need to have all those tools that I was mentioning before, the battle gear necessary, the warrior. And that's what King David began, a shepherd. That's what he's described as, similar to Moses the shepherd. And the reason is because these great leaders ultimately became, and they're called shepherds of their flock. That's what they're called, faithful shepherd. The shepherd, they shepherd their flocks. Just as they're sensitive to the sheep, they're sensitive to the human beings that they lead and they guide and direct. But then we find another side to David. He becomes a warrior, and a real warrior, for many battles, to the point, listen to this, that even those battles may have been justified, God says, you cannot build my holy temple because you have blood on your hands. And even if the blood was defense, and it was for good causes, but you have blood on your hands. Blood is not appropriate for my holy temple, which is a place of peace. And the whole purpose of creation is to bring peace to this world. Yes, there are battles that may need to be fought, especially when they're enemies and you need to protect yourself. But that itself is means to an end. And you cannot build my holy temple. He prepared the ground for it. He bought the property, the Temple Mount. But it was his son, King Solomon. King Solomon, a man of peace, who fought no wars. It was peaceful time in his time, who built the holy temple. At the same time, we also find King David, the psalmist. When you read the book of Psalms, 150 Psalms, you come away with one key message. This man was a man who both suffered, but with deep empathy. Every psalm pours with the blood, sweat, and tears of a man who's in pain, a man who cries out, who yearns. It's not just pain, but you see emotion upon emotion expressing itself. If you read the book of Psalms, you would not think this was a man that was a warrior. So it seems like almost a split personality, like two different alter egos going on. So how do we reconcile these two? So we have another two biblical characters, Jacob and Esau, that we discussed in a previous episode. The same thing. What does the Bible call Jacob? The scholar. Ish tom yeshiv aholim is the expression in Hebrew, which means the wholesome person, the innocent person. He dwelled in the tents, which means he was introspective, he was soulful, he was a scholar. Then how is his twin brother? Esau is called the warrior. He was a man who knew the trapper, the warrior, the man who knew the art of war. And these are twin brothers. And they also struggle between each other from the pregnancy. So how do we explain all this? Is because we do indeed have two souls. We have two voices. We have two drives. We use a psychological term, two drives. One is the drive to survive. We need to battle and tame the elements, whether it's the elements of weather, or it's the elements of a world with wild animals. And this is what we did. We created civilized cities. we had to tame the elements. We had to clear out jungles and wildernesses and animals that can threaten us. I'm not getting into whether it was all justified or not. And that's what we needed to do. We needed to be warriors, to hunt, to trap, to conquer. That's what human beings did. That was for their survival. Then there was another side to the human being, to each human being, which is what we'll call the transcendent voice, the transcendent drive, the drive for higher purpose, for deeper meaning, which is often expressed through romance, through love, through sexuality, through music, through art, through faith, through religion, through virtue, through soulfulness. So we have these two voices within us, and we often think that they're contradiction to each other. Because if you're in the survival mode, it's often antithetical to the transcendent voice, to the transcendent mode. But the truth is, both those are not the essence of who you are. The essence of you, who you are, is defined in very simple terms, but also very profound terms by the mystics. Your soul is a pure entity of energy and peace and harmony. Everything is seamless. There is no dissonance, and there's no duplicity. It's a seamless, unified energy force that comes into a fragmented and disjointed and confused and dark world. And the mission of your life, every one of us, is to bring harmony within that darkness, to bring light into that darkness, to bring warmth into that cold place. And in order to do so, we're given two voices, we're given two identities. One is obviously the voice of peace and harmony, that voice of unity, that voice that allows us to really appreciate the deeper, higher consciousness that connects and finds harmony within all diversity. But we also need another voice, because if we only had that one, what do we deal with the difficulties, with the challenges, with the corrupt, dark forces? So we need to be given strengths. We need to be given a tool chest, an arsenal that allows us to tame those elements, to have the ingenuity and the wisdom to deal with it, but never see yourself as a warrior. The warrior is only a part of you that's necessary to counter forces that are dark, to counter forces that may not be aligned, that may be experiencing different forms of dissonance and other psychological fears, inhibitions, insecurities, and all that comes with that side of life. So the truth is, the essence of who we are is, I don't even want to use people of peace. You're not just a man and woman of peace, because peace sounds like just the absence of war. Peace means something much more. Shalom in Hebrew means complete. A sense of complete fusion and integration of every aspect of your life. Sometimes you hear the concept explaining the difference between the right brain and the left brain, where the left brain is the details of your life and the right brain connects them all. You probably all heard that famous TED talk that also became a book, A Stroke of Genius? Where the neuroscientist, who's a neuroscientist, she became a neuroscientist because her brother had schizophrenia, so she wanted to understand, so it was close to her heart. And then she suffered a stroke that paralyzed part of her right brain. And she said, I was able to see the details, but I couldn't bring them together. There's a toothbrush, toothpaste, my mouth. So I saw suddenly the harmony within everything, but not the breakdown into details. I'm just giving the summation of it, which is a fascinating concept if you think about it. Because physics, of course, teaches us that everything is integrated. There's like an invisible quilt that is like a mosaic of all the details. When we see details, it's only because that's what it appears on a superficial, or you could say external level. But beneath it all lies an integral unity that connects it all. But we do live in a world also of diversity. So it's how do you bring that harmony, that unity, into a world of diversity or even divisiveness? For that, we need two tools. One is the voice of that harmony, and that's a sense of a higher state of consciousness that unites everything. But we have to bring that unifying light into a world that is scattered and even fragmented and can even be divisive to the point of war and conflict and discord, whether it's within ourselves, within our families, within our communities, or between nations. So we need both. I don't know if any of you are Trekkies, but Star Trek, there was one of the episodes where Captain Kirk goes to some place and something happens to him, And he splits into two parts. One is his judgment, his wisdom, his sensitivity, and the other is the more aggressive part of him. And it's fascinating to see how they both need each other. The aggressive one is very shrewd and very mischievous and is out completely for its own interest, but has a certain powerful drive. The other part, the docile part, is the wise one, but it's weak. And they realize they need each other. Just fascinating to see, like the type of Jekyll and Mr. Jekyll and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde split. So we need both. For someone who's going to just be a soft human being, and that's a beautiful virtue, they can get hurt in this world, in this tough world. On the other hand, for someone to only have the toughness and does not have that soft core center, that is even worse. And that's why we require both elements, and understanding them, they're both really forces that help us create one integrated whole, which is what? To bring that beautiful harmony, that integration, that synchronicity into a world that can often be clashing with each other. So there are battles to be fought, but you're not a battler. You're essentially a soul in a physical world, doing your best to try to bring that soulfulness and spiritualize the material world in which we live. Materialism on its own is essentially a battle. We battle each other for resources, supply and demand. Just look at what the forces that drive the economy, capitalism, the forces that drive competition. But that's not who we are. That's how we survive. That's how we manage in this world. Who we are is that soft core center, the beautiful child that you have always been and continue to be. So even if you learn to swim with the sharks, never remember that's not your identity. That's a tool, and it should only be used when necessary, and also always in the proper way, in an ethical way, because it's not an end in itself. Unfortunately, there are people who live in this world, and I've met many, who are either angry people who have a lot of bitterness, who feel that life has been unfair to them, who begin always thinking that they are under attack, and therefore are always in that battle mode. There's a certain defensiveness, a certain aggression, and it'll always be traced, you'll see it, to either childhood or experiences, traumas that cause them to be that way. I mean, I just remember recently being at an airport, and there was one woman extremely aggressive, like pushing, and felt that everybody was getting in front of her. And I was watching, and I was trying to say something kind to her. She wasn't hearing it. It happened to be Friday. So I said to her, "Good Shabbos," at some point. She was Jewish. That was just a wild guess. And something softened in her, not completely, but enough. And I said to her, you know, when we come to Shabbos, Shabbos is called Shabbos Menucha, the day of peace. So that's why we begin by lighting the candles. If you light the candles, you know, she says, yes, I do light the candles. What's a candle? A candle is a peaceful entity, but it does something that no weapon in the world can do. No candle is stronger than big weapons, than tanks and nuclear warheads and other ammunition and different war machines. But a candle can do something nothing else can do. It can dispel darkness. A little light. And it doesn't do it aggressively, but it still dispels darkness. So it has both elements to it. It's a peaceful flame. And when, obviously, if you don't have it under control, it could also be aggressive and dangerous. It's a peaceful flame that dispels darkness naturally, not like fire and water, where enough fire can evaporate large bodies of water, and enough water can extinguish large fires. That's a battle. Here it's not a battle. Light dispels darkness, but you have to engage with the darkness. And sometimes there is a need for some battle. Like you take a piece of wood, if it's not completely dry, there will be crackling until it gets to a point where the log burns quietly. That's what we're looking for, the quiet burning, but it's burning. And what is burning? A log, a material log. So the idea is to deal with the challenges, understand when you need to use your battle gear, but never become a battler. That's not your identity. It's a tool that you use. You are that unified, beautiful, peaceful soul. So it comes to King David. That's what King David was. He knew he was always the soul. He was the shepherd. But then there were wars to be fought, and he paid the price. Because you fought the wars, even a little blood on your hands was enough. But this was a lot of blood. Dam Rav Shafachta, he shed much blood. So he understood. Because the fact is, even though it may have been justifiable, but that's not the objective. We want a temple, a peaceful temple. We want a Shabbat. We want harmony and calm and tranquility. And for that, we have to also have the other side of the person, and that's the psalmist within him. So David, as many wars as he fought, King David, he was also the psalmist. And he left us this tremendous book of poetry, of psalms. And he actually even asked God, may this be the book that everybody uses when they say prayers to you. Yehi l'rotzen imre fi. May it be your will that this should be the words that everybody utters. And that's what happened. Since King David, thousands of years later, today we say the book of Psalms when we're in need. Different psalms for different occasions that are meant to allow us the language, you can say the music of the soul, to pour out when it's in need, when it's in pain, when it's joyous gratitude. Everything that we express from that deeper place, the book of Psalms offers us. So the same person who was a warrior also gave us the Psalms, because he wasn't fundamentally, at the end of the day, a warrior. He was a shepherd. He was a sensitive soul, and probably more sensitive than anyone, as you can see in the book of Psalms. We have those two voices within us. We have these two forces. We need them both, but remember who your true identity is. And this is one of the most important lessons from biblical characters decoded from King David. I hope we all can apply it. I hope to hear back from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, your feedback, your comments. And of course, please share with others. This has been Simon Jacobson, Meaningful Life Center, meaningfullife.com. Check us out. Wide array of different offerings, programs, video, audio, podcasts, text, on all the social media platforms. For your taking, please take advantage of it. And again, I'd love to hear back from you. May we all be able to join together in this glorious symphony, in this mosaic, in finding the harmony within our diversity and having to fight the least amount of battles. After all the years of history, after all the wars and battles fought, we're at a time we can honestly say that we can turn the swords into plowshares, transform even the aggressive tools into tools for beautiful growth and beautiful harmony between us all. Be well and be blessed. Thank you.